Liar's Paradox. The Liar's Paradox is a well-known and fascinating puzzle in philosophy and logic that investigates the nature of truth and self-reference. The paradox emerges from statements that refer to themselves in a manner that generates a logical contradiction. To comprehend this paradox, let's examine its fundamental form and the implications it holds for our understanding of logic. The basic version of the Liar's Paradox can be stated with the phrase, "This statement is false." To analyze this, we must determine the truth value of the statement. If we assume that the statement is true, then it correctly describes itself as false. However, if it is indeed false, then the statement is actually true since it asserts its own falsehood. This results in a contradiction, as the statement cannot simultaneously be both true and false. The paradox underscores a fundamental problem with self-referential statements in conventional binary logic systems, where statements are typically classified as either true or false. The Liar's Paradox disrupts this binary classification by presenting a situation in which a statement's truth value cannot be definitively established. The Liar's Paradox has origins in ancient philosophical discussions. One of the earliest instances is attributed to the Greek philosopher Epimenides, who famously stated, "All Cretans are liars." Since Epimenides was a Cretan himself, he created a self-referential statement. If his statement is true, then, as a Cretan, he must be lying, which results in a contradiction. On the other hand, if he is lying, then not all Cretans are liars, which renders his statement false. This early example illustrates the paradoxical nature of self-referential statements. In modern logic, the Liar's Paradox is frequently expressed in a more precise formulation. This statement is false. This expression encapsulates the essence of the paradox, serving as a clear example of how self-reference can generate logical contradictions. The paradox challenges the ability to classify statements within a simple true-false dichotomy and exposes deeper issues within the foundations of logic. The fundamental Liar's Paradox can be extended to create various forms of paradoxical statements. For example, consider the assertion, "This statement is neither true nor false." This variation introduces the notion that a statement may not conform to the traditional binary classification of truth and falsehood, raising questions about whether alternative logical categories or frameworks are required to address such cases. Another variation involves sets of self-referential statements. If a group of statements each refers to the truth value of others, intricate networks of self-reference can be formed, further complicating the paradox. These variations demonstrate that the paradox is not confined to a single formulation, but can be adapted to explore different facets of self-reference and logical coherence. The Liar's Paradox has significant implications for the study of logic and formal systems. It reveals limitations in traditional logical frameworks that rely on binary truth values by presenting a scenario in which a statement's truth value cannot be decisively determined. The paradox raises questions about whether existing logical systems are sufficient to handle self-referential and contradictory statements. It also lays the groundwork for exploring more advanced logical theories designed to address such challenges. Understanding the Liar's Paradox requires an examination of how formal systems can be structured to prevent contradictions and accommodate self-referential statements coherently. To delve deeper into the Liar's Paradox, we must explore its logical and philosophical implications. This paradox is more than just an intellectual curiosity. It presents a significant challenge to the foundations of logic and our comprehension of self-reference. By analyzing these implications, we can better appreciate the complexities involved and the broader impact on formal reasoning. The Liar's Paradox exposes notable issues within classical logic systems, particularly regarding self-reference and the concept of truth. Classical logic traditionally categorizes statements as either true or false. However, the Liar's Paradox creates a scenario in which this binary classification fails. The statement, "This statement is false," cannot be neatly designated as true or false without resulting in contradiction. The paradox challenges the assumption that every statement must possess a clear truth value. When a statement refers to itself and generates a logical loop, traditional binary logic fails to provide a consistent resolution. This suggests a limitation in classical logical systems, indicating that they may not be fully equipped to address all forms of self-referential statements. The implications of the liar's paradox extend to formal systems in mathematics and logic. These formal systems aim to provide a rigorous framework for reasoning and to avoid contradictions. However, the liar's paradox exposes vulnerabilities in these systems, particularly when self-reference is involved. One approach to mitigating this issue is to modify formal systems to prevent self-referential statements from leading to contradictions. For instance, type theory, developed by Bertrand Russell and others, introduces a hierarchy of types to avoid self-reference. In this system, sets are arranged into different levels, and a set cannot contain itself or other sets of the same or higher level. This hierarchical structure helps prevent paradoxes by restricting the formation of self-referential statements. Philosophically, the liar's paradox raises fundamental questions about the nature of truth and meaning. It challenges the notion that statements can always be neatly categorized as true or false, and invites consideration of more nuanced approaches to defining truth. The paradox suggests that traditional conceptions of truth may be inadequate, and that alternative frameworks may be necessary to address self-referential statements. It also highlights the complexity of language and meaning. When a statement refers to itself, it can create logical loops that defy conventional interpretation. This has broader implications for understanding meaning and interpretation in language, demonstrating that self-reference can introduce challenges that require careful analysis. Various alternative approaches have been proposed to address the challenges posed by the liar's paradox. One such approach is semantic theory, which investigates how meaning and truth can be managed in the presence of self-reference. Semantic theories aim to establish a framework for consistently defining and interpreting statements about truth. Another approach is dialetheism, which allows for the possibility that statements can be both true and false simultaneously. This perspective challenges the traditional binary notion of truth and provides a means to handle self-referential paradoxes without generating contradictions. By accepting that some statements may possess multiple truth values, dialetheism offers an alternative means of accommodating paradoxes like the liar's paradox. The liar's paradox has significantly influenced logic and philosophy by exposing the limitations of classical approaches and inspiring the development of new theories. It has prompted deeper inquiries into the nature of truth, self-reference, and formal reasoning. The paradox serves as a catalyst for exploring more sophisticated logical frameworks and philosophical perspectives. By examining the liar's paradox and its broader implications, we gain insight into the challenges of defining and understanding truth in the presence of self-reference. Beyond its role in philosophy and formal logic, the liar's paradox has significant implications for other fields, including computer science, mathematics, and linguistics. In computer science, the paradox highlights the importance of addressing self-reference and recursion in programming and algorithm design. Self-referential constructs, such as recursive functions, are common in programming but require careful handling to prevent paradoxical outcomes. For example, a function that calls itself without a proper termination condition can lead to infinite loops or undefined behavior, mirroring the paradoxical issues of self-reference seen in the liar's paradox. Techniques such as base cases and recursion are employed to prevent infinite loops and ensure that functions terminate properly. These strategies help avoid the pitfalls of self-reference and contribute to the development of reliable and efficient algorithms. In summary, the liar's paradox is a thought-provoking challenge that reveals the limitations of traditional logical systems and encourages the exploration of new approaches to understanding truth and self-reference. Its impact extends across multiple disciplines, highlighting the complexities inherent in logical reasoning, language, and formal systems. The grandfather paradox. Imagine a scenario where time travel is possible, and you possess a time machine. You decide to travel back in time to meet your grandfather when he was a young man. However, things take an unexpected turn. While you are in the past, you inadvertently prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. This results in a situation where your parents were never born, and consequently, you were never born. Here's the paradox. If you were never born, how could you have traveled back in time to prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? If you never existed, you could not have gone back in time to create this situation in the first place. This creates a logical contradiction because your actions in the past appear to negate your own existence. This is known as the grandfather paradox, a classic problem in discussions about time travel and causality. The paradox challenges our understanding of cause and effect and raises questions about the consistency of time and the possibility of altering the past. To better visualize this paradox, consider this. If you could go back and change events in such a way that prevents your own existence, you create a situation where you should not have been able to make those changes in the first place. This results in a paradox where the cause, your time travel, contradicts the effect, your existence. The grandfather paradox is not just a theoretical puzzle. It has significant implications for our understanding of time travel. If time travel were indeed possible, it could lead to contradictions and complex issues regarding causality and the flow of time. The paradox also prompts intriguing questions about the nature of time and reality. If traveling to the past could result in such paradoxes, what does this mean for the feasibility of time travel? One common response to the paradox involves the concept of parallel universes or alternate timelines. According to this theory, if you were to travel back in time and alter events, you would create a new parallel timeline where the changes take place. In this new timeline, your actions would have prevented your own existence, but it would not affect the original timeline you came from. In this way, the grandfather paradox is resolved by suggesting that time travel creates branching timelines rather than altering a single, fixed timeline. Each timeline remains consistent within its own context, avoiding contradictions by separating the changes into different realities. Another approach to addressing the paradox is the idea of time loops or closed time-like curves. This theory suggests that events in the past are part of a closed loop, meaning that any actions you take when traveling back in time are already accounted for in the timeline. Essentially, you might find that you cannot change significant events in the past because they are already integrated into the timeline. In this view, the paradox is resolved by the idea that the timeline is self-consistent. Your actions, even if they seem to contradict the possibility of your existence, are part of a larger, unchangeable loop of events that does not allow for contradictions. The grandfather paradox also leads to discussions about the limitations of our understanding of time and causality. It challenges our intuitive notions of cause and effect and forces us to reconsider how we think about the flow of time and the possibility of altering past events. Beyond philosophy, the grandfather paradox has implications for various fields, including physics, philosophy, and even popular culture. The paradox simulates discussions about the nature of time, causality, and the feasibility of time travel. In physics, the paradox raises questions about the consistency of physical laws and the potential for time travel. While some theories, such as Einstein's theory of relativity, allow for the theoretical possibility of time travel, they also imply constraints that could prevent paradoxes like the grandfather paradox from occurring. For example, some physicists argue that certain conditions, such as the requirement for infinite energy or closed time-like curves, may prevent paradoxical scenarios. Philosophically, the paradox challenges our understanding of determinism and free will. If time travel were possible, it could lead to questions about whether our actions are predetermined or whether we have the ability to alter the course of events. The paradox forces us to grapple with the implications of altering past events and the potential consequences for our understanding of reality. In popular culture, the grandfather paradox has inspired numerous works of fiction, from novels to movies, that explore the complexity and consequences of time travel. These fictional portrayals often play with the paradox in creative ways, highlighting the challenges and potential solutions to time travel dilemmas. Looking ahead, the grandfather paradox remains a valuable thought experiment for exploring the boundaries of our understanding of time and reality. While time travel remains a theoretical concept, the paradox provides insights into the challenges and limitations that would arise if such phenomena were possible. In summary, the grandfather paradox is a compelling puzzle that prompts us to reconsider our notions of time, causality, and the nature of reality. By examining the paradox and its implications, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities associated with time travel and the broader philosophical questions it raises. Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus is one of the most enduring and thought-provoking puzzles in philosophy, raising deep questions about identity, change, and what it means for an object to remain the same over time. The paradox revolves around the idea of gradual replacement. If a ship, over the course of many years, has each of its parts replaced one by one until none of the original components remain, can we still consider it to be the same ship? This seemingly simple question has profound implications for how we think about objects, identity, and continuity. The paradox is named after Theseus, a legendary figure in Greek mythology. As the story goes, after Theseus successfully returned from his many adventures, including the famous encounter with the Minotaur, the Athenians preserved his ship in honor of his heroism. Over time, however, the wooden parts of the ship began to rot and decay. To preserve the ship, the Athenians replaced each plank, mast, and beam with new materials. Eventually, every single part of the ship was replaced. The question that arises is whether the ship, after all these replacements, is still the same vessel that Theseus sailed. At first glance, it might seem obvious that the ship remained the same. After all, it retains its form, function, and purpose. It continues to be recognized as the Ship of Theseus, serving as a symbol of Theseus's legacy and a piece of Athenian history. However, the fact that none of the original materials remain raises a significant challenge to this view. If the ship's identity is tied to its physical components, then how can it be the same ship if all those components have been replaced? This leads us to the philosophical concept of identity over time, which concerns how an object can maintain its identity despite undergoing changes. One approach to this question is to focus on physical continuity, the idea that an object's identity is preserved as long as there is some form of physical continuity between its past and present states. According to this view, the ship's identity would be compromised as its original parts are replaced, and it would eventually become a different ship once all the parts are new. However, this approach raises further questions. For instance, if identity is based on physical continuity, how many parts need to be replaced before the ship is no longer the same? Is there a specific threshold at which the ship's identity changes? Or is the loss of identity a gradual process where the ship slowly becomes less Theseus's ship and more something else? These questions illustrate the difficulty of defining identity purely in terms of physical continuity. Another perspective emphasizes the importance of conceptual identity, the idea that the identity of an object is not tied to its physical parts, but to its concept or role. From this standpoint, the Ship of Theseus remains the same as long as it continues to fulfill the same function and is recognized as the same entity by those who interact with it. This view suggests that the ship's identity is preserved not through its materials, but through the continuity of its form, purpose, and meaning within society. This conceptual approach aligns with how we often think about identity in everyday life. Consider, for example, a museum artifact that has been restored with new material to maintain its appearance. Even though the materials are different, the artifact may still be regarded as authentic because it represents the same historical object. Similarly, the Ship of Theseus might retain its identity as long as it continues to be understood and valued as the ship associated with Theseus, regardless of the changes it has undergone. However, this raises the question of what exactly it is that we are identifying when we say the ship is the same. Are we identifying a physical object, a concept, or something else entirely? And if the ship's identity is conceptual rather than physical, does that mean that any object could be considered the same as long as it fits the concept? These are some of the deeper questions that the Ship of Theseus paradox invites us to explore. Building on the idea of identity, the Ship of Theseus paradox takes a more complex turn when we consider scenarios that further challenge our intuitions about what it means for something to remain the same over time. One of the most intriguing variations of this thought experiment involves the possibility of reassembling the original ship using the discarded parts. Suppose every plank, mast, and beam that was replaced on Theseus's ship was carefully stored, and eventually, these original parts were reassembled into a ship. Now we are faced with a perplexing situation. There are two ships, one made entirely of new parts, and another made of the original parts. Which one, if either, is the true ship of Theseus? This question introduces the concept of reassembly, which complicates the notions of physical continuity and conceptual identity even further. If the ship's identity is tied to its original parts, then it might seem that the reassembled ship, composed entirely of the original materials, should be considered the authentic ship of Theseus. After all, it possesses the very same physical components that once made up the ship Theseus sailed. From this perspective, the ship that has undergone repairs with new parts could be seen as a replica, or a new ship altogether, despite its continuity in function and form. However, the situation is not so straightforward. If we accept that the reassembled ship is the true ship of Theseus, we face the challenge of explaining why the ship that has remained in use, the one that has been gradually repaired and maintained, is not the original. This ship has been preserved with the intention of maintaining Theseus's legacy, and it has continued to serve as a cultural and historical symbol. Can we dismiss its identity simply because its physical components have been replaced? The tension between these two perspectives forces us to confront the idea that identity might not be a straightforward concept, but rather something that can be influenced by context and intention. The reassembled ship, while physically identical to the original, lacks the continuity of history and function that the repaired ship possesses. On the other hand, the repaired ship, while maintaining its functional continuity, does not have the same material connection to the original vessel. This raises the possibility that both ships might, in some sense, be considered the ship of Theseus, each representing different aspects of identity, one tied to physical continuity, and the other to conceptual or functional continuity. As we explore these ideas further, we can see that the ship of Theseus is not just a puzzle about a ship, but a profound exploration of what it means to be the same, whether as an object, a person, or a society.